Hey, how's it going everyone? It's me, Jeff the IT guy. Welcome to the channel. Hope everyone's doing well. Today we're going to be taking a look at the iPad Air. This is the Generation 3 iPad Air. We're going to talk about the tech specs, talk about its performance, and we're also going to talk about how it does in professional workloads. You know, here on the channel, that's what we look at. We want to see how our equipment handles professional tasks, and we look at content creation and IT here on the channel. So let's talk about the iPad Air 3. Let's talk about the specs right now. Okay, so it's got a 10.5-inch display, which is pretty nice. It's actually a really nice display. So it's 10.5-inch display. It's got a 2224 by 1668 screen. That's the resolution of it. Yes, I was cheating and looking at the specs. It has the Apple A12 Bionic chip in it. The A12 is just a little bit slower than the A12X that was in the last generation of the iPad Pro. Okay, this does support the Apple Pencil, not Apple Pencil 2, but Apple Pencil 1. It takes a lightning connector. Don't know if you can see that because of the case. And it's got two rear-facing speakers. The speakers aren't that bad. The screen is awesome. Battery life is great on this thing. I can get typically about 10 hours out of it for doing just iPad type things. Mostly it's taking notes for meetings, listening to things, making sure I get everything written down. So let's go ahead and talk about the performance of it then. After, that's just some of the specs. I'm not going to read a spec sheet, but let's talk about the performance of it here. And I was actually quite surprised by this, to be honest. So let's talk about Geekbench first of all. I like to run Geekbench on everything. So we'll talk about the Geekbench score. Geekbench for the iPad Air was 1110 for single core, and it was 2,914 for the multi-core. That's actually pretty good, and I'll tell you why. The 2018 base model MacBook Air gets a single core of 749 and a multi-core of 1,511. So this is faster. This is faster than a MacBook Air, 2018 model MacBook Air as far as Geekbench performance goes. The 6th gen iPad that I did a review of for IT professionals a couple weeks ago, got a 764 on the single core and 1370 on the multi-core. And so that was actually pretty close to performance of the 2018 MacBook Air. Now they are different architectures, of course. This uses an ARM processor, and so does the iPad 6th gen, and the MacBook Air has an Intel or an x86 in it for the architecture. So let's talk about how it handles some tasks. As you noticed in the pictures, or hopefully some of the B-roll, I use a Magic Keyboard with this. This is like I think a 2012 model Magic Keyboard, maybe even earlier than that. I can't remember. I bought it way back when, and I use that with it as well as a trackpad. And it works really well, actually. And so typing on the Magic Keyboard is great. And I've got the iPad on a stand, so it's actually like a really small laptop experience, to be honest. And so I'm able to type on it, fast and furious. I take a lot of notes for meetings on it. I handle Slack through it, emails. You can even code on it. And so I'm going to show up here on the screen doing some coding, and it's not like live coding or anything like that, but just how you could do some coding and have up at the same time an SSH through Terminus. The IDE is Textastic. I think it's like $9.99 or something on the App Store. So just using it for that, it works great. And actually having the trackpad, the gestures are fantastic. And so I'll show, you should see some of it as well with the gestures. You can swipe up with it and you can look at everything. You can swipe down and be able to search. You can swipe left and right with 3 fingers like you can on OS X. And so it really gives it a laptop feel, and it's fantastic for that, really. So I even looked at doing some editing. So what I did was I recorded myself on the iPad. So I used the iPad to record myself in Textastic and Terminus for just a couple minutes, going through some things, just really just moving around and lollygagging. And then I put that in iMovie, so you can get iMovie on your iPad. And just played around an iPad, you'll see, or iMovie, you'll see it up as well. And just messed around with it. I never used iMovie. I use Final Cut Pro. But in iMovie, it was actually really decent to go ahead and try and edit some things once I kind of got used to what was going on. You can make splits and add text and titles and things like that, which was pretty cool. And then you can export it, so you can save it to iCloud or the iPad itself. And so to export, it's about a 4-minute video out of iMovie. Was 1 minute and 13 seconds to export a 4-minute video, which is pretty cool. It really is, to think that you can export. And it was 1080p. It's a 1080p movie out of iMovie, so it was recorded straight from the iPad in iMovie. Did a little bit of lollygagging around with the editing. It took about 1 minute and 13 seconds to export. And so if you're someone out there who wants to record yourself doing things on an iPad, you can do your entire workflow on an iPad Air. I even looked at Adobe Rush, and so in Adobe Rush, you have a little bit more options from what I've seen than iMovie. It could just be because I'm more familiar with Adobe Rush. But you're able to go in and add titles and transitions and colors and all sorts of stuff. You can do anything on it that you can on Adobe Rush for your PC or your Mac. And to export the same video, it took 16 minutes. Now, I was very shocked that it took 16 minutes. And during this, you have to leave the iPad open. You can't have it closed. You can't change screens. It has to stay on that screen, and you have to keep it open. So it can't go to sleep or anything. And it took 16 minutes. Now, which isn't bad, I don't guess, considering that you're trying to export a video. And which is pretty cool. Like I said, that you can do everything you wanted to on this. So if you're wanting to, say, get into YouTube or anything like that, or you have to do tutorials, something like that, you can do your entire workflow on an iPad Air. The cameras are pretty decent, so you can actually get started with recording yourself with your iPad Air. The sound's not going to be the greatest, but it's not going to be bad, right? It's just a place to start. And then you can actually do all of your editing and stuff either through iMovie or Adobe Rush, Premiere Rush, and you can do it all on a single device, which is really, really cool. So let's talk about some of the cons with the iPad Air. One of the things I don't like is you have 2 storage options. You've got 64 gig and 256. There's no in between. And to jump from that 64 to 256 is $150. That is a lot, in my opinion, to jump. Now, yes, you do quadruple your storage, but it's still a pretty hefty price to pay, considering that an SSD, you can get a 1 terabyte for $100. So, $150 for going up by 4 is not good, in my opinion. Now, if you catch it on sale, you might be able to do it. And so let's talk about the price. The price is, I think it's $499 for the 64 gig and $649 for the 256 gig. When you start talking about or 650 bucks, plus a $30, $40 keyboard, and $120, $30 trackpad, at that point you're in MacBook Air territory, really. At $899, you can get a MacBook Air on sale. And so when you start looking at it that way, I don't think it's a good purchase unless you had planned on having a laptop and an iPad. Now, if you're one of the people who has a laptop and an iPad, then this would be a great solution to do both of them if you don't need apps that only run on OS X or Windows. And so if all you're doing is things that you can do apps with on your iPad, and you're going to maybe shoot some video on it, take some pictures, do a little bit of light editing, something like that, you can do that on this. If you are a programmer, I know I've done a video on how to program with an iPad. if you're doing like web development or PHP, Python, stuff like that, or if you have to connect to, say, your server via SSH and everything, you can do all that on this as well. And so it really fits double duty, right? So if you're a person, like I said, who wants a laptop and an iPad, then you could actually get away with having the iPad Air 3rd gen to do both of those. And at that point, you would save some money. However, if you need more horsepower, or you're going to do more than just web development or connecting via SSH and things like that, let's say you need to do Xcode or something, or Android Studio, you're not going to be able to do that on this. Like I said, though, however, you can do web development for days, PHP, Python, there's even Java, IDEs. You can use Terminus to SSH into a Raspberry Pi. I've done it before here on the channel. So that's actually pretty cool that you can actually do that. And the last thing that I will say about this concerning the storage is, if you think 64 gig isn't enough, then it might not be. However, you can get away with having iCloud storage. And it's much cheaper to get 200 gigs of iCloud storage than what it is to get a 256 gig drive inside your iPad. Also, as well, due to the new file system, where you can actually access files now inside of your iPad OS, you can connect to your other PCs or Macs in your house on your network if you set it up, to where you can actually transfer files over so that you don't have to worry about it filling up. And so after I did the recording and the video editing and stuff, I just took those files, I had them automatically go to iCloud, and I can just move them to any of the PCs in my house or the Macs in my house that I wanted to, and work with them on a desktop experience or a laptop experience. So you can get away from that. And so my suggestion is, after this long video, is if you're in the market for an iPad and you maybe want to think about having a laptop replacement, my suggestion is get an iPad Air, the 64 gig, get a $20 to $30 Bluetooth keyboard, and maybe a $20 to $30 mouse, because it does work with a mouse as well. And if you absolutely love the trackpad, or you've already got one, then go ahead and use it and get one of those. And pick yourself up some iCloud storage. And then just have your iPad send everything to the cloud. And that way you can get away from having to spend that extra $150. And so if you do it that way, all in, you'll have about the price of the 256 gig iPad Air. And so this has been my review of the iPad Air. I'm sorry if you're not super technical or you're not an IT person. I do try and cover professional workloads, like I said, and IT professionals in my videos. And so that's why this was added in there. But for anyone else who has stuck through this video, thank you for watching. If you want to see more videos like this, look, I've got an iPad Pro video coming up. We're going to do a review of it. We're going to do an iPad Pro versus a MacBook Air. As you can see, this iPad Air, the iPad Pro versus the MacBook Air. As you can see, the iPad Air already beats it, so it shouldn't be that big of a competition, really. Got some CPU reviews coming up. We're going to look at hopefully some 10th gen Intel stuff. We're going to look at the new Ryzen processors, the 3100 and the 3300X. We're going to be doing maybe some more tutorials on how to build a website and everything like that. If you're into that sort of stuff, then stay tuned. Go ahead and subscribe and hit the bell notification and leave a comment. I love answering comments and talking to other people. I'm very active on answering. I answer every single comment that I get. And I actually put time into it instead of just saying, hey, thanks. I actually put time into it. So thanks for watching. You all have a great day and stay safe. See ya.